Well, how does the song go? The stars at night are big and bright, deep in the heart of Texas. Just not this year. Houstan, losers of 2 straight, head to Dallas trying to turn things around. They're getting healthier as Nico Collins, their wide receiver, is set to return. Meanwhile, the Cowboys at home, forget about it. And they've got their backup under center should he be the one playing. That's why they're a touchdown dog at home. We'll break it all down for you on the pregame power-up and figure out everything else that happened in Week 11. And it starts now. Well, AT&T Stadium saw Tyson versus Paul on Friday night, which is cool because nobody watching on Netflix could. Now they get Stroud versus Rush. Not exactly the headliner people were looking for, but hopefully these two will actually throw a couple of punches in this football game tonight. And with that, we are off and running. Glad you're with us on the pregame power-up on DraftKings Network. Trey Wingo here with Claudia Bellafato. Emerson Lazio will join us. Our big man from Fort Worth, Marshall Newhouse, will also be here. We'll try and explain what happened over the weekend. Who's the front runner for the MVP right now? How much did the Chiefs' loss to Buffalo shake up the AFC picture? And can you tank in the NFL? Well, with what one team is doing, it kind of feels that way. But Claudia, first, the line for this game. The Texans hope to be rising. The Cowboys seem to be falling.
Yeah, and no big surprise here with the Texans opening as a touchdown favorite. It opened at 7, so a ton of money came in, the sharps, and then just the public, the regular bettors out there. The book moved it to 7.5. And again, not surprising when you're getting that hook over that key number of 7, people are going to bet the other way. They're going to grab the points because, as we know, any given Sunday, any given Monday, certain things can happen despite how bad this Dallas squad has been. So now we're seeing it swing around, hanging at that 7.5. But closer to minus 115 for the juice. I would still say Texans probably have a good chance of winning this thing, covering the 7.5. You can also wait if you want to see that number come back down, possibly if Dallas scores first, that live line is going to move. That's probably the only approach I would take to it. A bunch of injuries that we will get into. Absolutely. Of course, the big one coming back, Micah Parsons. The Cowboys had him last week. Didn't really matter because they still got blown out. They're awful at home, which we'll get into. And then Nico Collins, a big one back for Houstan.
That's where we will begin because the Texans are getting a player back they desperately need. C.J. Stroud's best weapon as a wide receiver, Nico Collins. Back from that hamstring injury tonight. Hasn't played since week 5, and the team has struggled in his absence, especially offensively. Collins came off IR in practice Friday, telling reporters, and I quote, "Hell yeah, I'm playing this week," end quote, which is the most Texas thing any player could actually say.
Hell yeah.
If you think about it. Now, C.J. Stroud is really happy that Nico Collins said, "Hell yeah, I'm playing this week," because he's a different dude with Nico in the lineup. Just look at the splits. C.J. has a passer rating about 30 points higher. The Texans went 2-3 in games he missed after starting 4-1 with Nico in the lineup. Collins' return as the league leader in receiving yards per game at 113.4, and let's just say his quarterback is glad he's out there to throw to.
Yeah, man, he brings a seriousness, an intent, a discipline, just like a mindset that, you know, we ask for from everybody. And, you know, I believe that, you know, he has that personality to where, like, he wants the hard coverage guy. He wants the hard routes to run, and he wants to make the hard plays. And you know, when he gets the ball, he's dangerous. You know, he's able to turn good into great. And, you know, he runs guys over. He does all these things that, you know, and D'Amico is definitely loves that. So, and he's the guy who's built for it, you know, bodily wise. So he turns the whole team out, from the defense to me to Tank to, you know, he gets everybody juiced up to play hard. And, you know, I definitely think that we've been missing that. And, you know, it's great to have him back.
So as we said, the Texans will be looking to end that 2-game slide, and this is a game on primetime. Well, each of those losses have come in primetime, making this their 3rd consecutive primetime game. They've actually had the leads in the fourth quarter of each of their last 3 losses, whether it was up in Green Bay to take on the Packers, when they went on the road to the Jets, and also when they had the Lions down 23-7. And in their last 4 games, they lost 2 of those by a field goal as time expired. And it's really been the offense that has let Houston down. Without Collins, and again, they also lost wideout Stephon Diggs to injury late in their Week 8 win over Indy. This offense is really struggling to find that dynamic presence they had in C.J. Stroud's rookie season. They're scoring 20 points per game, which ranks 21st in the league. Total yards is 27th, and this usually explosive passing attack is averaging just over 162 passing yards per game, which ranks 29th. Keep in mind there are only 32 teams in the league. No doubt they'll be happy to have Collins back in the mix tonight, but while the Texans are adding players, Claudia, Dallas is dealing with backups.
Yeah, Dak Prescott, we knew he wouldn't be back on the field, but officially placed on IR, out for the season with a torn hammy. So this is Cooper Rush's team now, baby. Well, at least for this week. Rush will be making his 7th career start for a Cowboys squad that has lost 4 in a row. Rush started in their loss to Philly last week, where he led them to a season low. 6 points, 146 total yards, and just 49 passing yards. That brings us to our first in trend, which is all about big-time Rush. Interestingly enough, though, he is 5-2 straight up and against the spread with the Cowboys. Both losses to the Eagles, 6-1 to the under. So, as I mentioned, not a lot of points scored with him under center. In Dallas now, 7-point underdogs or more in consecutive home games for the first time since 2001. After last week's performance, some were clamoring for the team to start former 3rd overall pick Trey Lance, cough, cough, Trey Wingo. But as Emerson Latia explains, that wasn't going to happen.
Thank you so much, Claudia. Yes, Cooper Rush has mostly been a winner during his limited reps as starter with the Cowboys. But let's not forget Trey Lance, the number 3 overall pick in the 2021 draft. The Cowboys traded for him in the preseason last year. Yes, he's only 2-2 as a starter, which is not as good as Rush's winning percentage, but he has a higher passer rating, and he also has higher yards per attempt, the number in that category throughout his career. But this is why Jerry Jones and others with the Cowboys say they are sticking with the Temu version of Andy Dalton.
Cooper has shown that he has the capability to compete and win in games, and he does give us our best chance. Frankly, that was really an out-of-character game for him based on what we've seen and we know about Cooper.
Well, I think Cooper, he has to get us in and out of the runs and passes, just get into the flow of the game. We need to be productive with the football, and that's really getting the ball distributed. You have to distribute the ball 53, 54, 55 times a game to your perimeter people, whether we're handing it off, or throwing it. So we have to get back into that functionality of an offense.
Yeah, like I said, it's the NFL. You're going to win, you're going to lose. Your butt smacked sometimes, and the beauty is that it's right back to it the next week. You don't have to wait a whole year. You don't have to do all that, and it's right here, right in front of you, and it doesn't really allow you to dwell on the last game as much, and so that's kind of what we're doing.
Okay, Claudia, I have some good news and I have some bad news for Cowboys fans. Bad news is the team is 0-4 this season in the games in which Cooper Rush has thrown a pass. But the good news, that enemy high up in the sky, the sun, he will be setting. He will not be a factor this evening. So you only, Cowboys, have to focus on the opponent on the field. Now, that said, that shiny star has been a pain in the rear of Dallas for a long time now, so we're going to ask Cowboys fans what the solution is to battling their big, beefy, bright enemy. Claudia?
Well, they might have to worry about things falling from the sky.
We'll get to that.
We'll get to that. Even before Dak Prescott went down, this Cowboys offense wasn't really doing much, and now it's just even worse. It's the worst offense by the team since Mike McCarthy took over as head coach in 2020. Lowest total yards since 2002 over Dave Campo. The team finished 5-11. He was fired. He's still the only Cowboys head coach to leave the team with a losing record in his tenure. It's no Nico Collins, but hey, it is something. The Cowboys will get help at the receiver position with the trade deadline acquisition. Jonathan Mingo expected to suit up for the first time. Well, yeah, Mingo was curiously acquired earlier this season. Big question mark here from the Panthers for a 4th-round pick. The second-year receiver had just 12 catches for 121 yards in 9 games with Carolina, Trey.
Yeah, see, this makes me think that the Cowboys must have loved Mingo leading up to the draft process, because otherwise, why would you give up a 4th-round pick for a guy who had those meager numbers?
I don't know, but they have a lot more problems. That wide receiver is really the one they don't have a major issue at.
As Ted Lasso says, that don't make no sense. And they basically gave the same offer that the Chiefs gave up to get DeAndre Hopkins for Jonathan Mingo. All right, for more on this, we're not going to ask her to make sense of that because that's not possible. Let's head to Las Vegas and the DraftKings trade floor, where VSiN's betting analyst Stormy Bonatoni is with us. Stormy, forget Mingo for a minute. Let's focus in on Nico Collins. Do bettors like his numbers in his return to the Texans lineup?
Yeah, let's not ever ask me to try to make sense of anything that Jerry Jones does, the why, the what, the when, the how, who knows. But as far as Nico Collins goes, yeah, bettors are very interested in Nico Collins today. We've seen a 9-yard move on his receiving yards total over. 95% of the bets that are coming in are on the over now, 74.5 yards. And as you look at the top 5 props for the game as a whole, 2 of them are alternate receiving yards numbers for Nico Collins at the 60 and 70-yard numbers, despite heavy juice on those. We're talking -250, -160 respectively on that. He's also the second most anytime and first touchdown scorer on the game, behind only Joe Mixon, who, as we know, has scored in 5 straight and gotten in the end zone at least once in 8 of the last 9 games. I, too, dabbled a little bit on Nico Collins today, but I took his over 5.5 receptions when he was playing in 3 of the 4 full games that he was out there. He had 6+ receptions in 3 of them. He was targeted 44 times in those 4 games. And we heard from CJ Stroud, he's really excited to have his buddy back.
Stormy, I don't like to assume, but I'm assuming there's a lot more action on the Texans players than there is Dallas tonight, because there's a lot of question marks. As I mentioned, Cooper Rush hasn't been terrible, 5-2 straight up in ATS, but there's still a lot of question marks on how successful this offense can actually be against a tough Texans defense. What does the action look like for the Cowboys offense?
Yeah, Claudia, when you're at home and your team total is 16.5 and your best offensive player the last 2 weeks was Rico Dowdle, it doesn't say a whole lot of good about the state of your offense. Maybe the D in Big D stands for depressing. I don't know. That's just me. But as we look at some of the specific props with Dallas, bettors were rushing to bet Cooper Rush under. His passing yards prop was bet down 15 yards, down to 171.5, and it's still like 92% of the action that's coming in on that is the under. And his passing touchdowns prop was set at just a half a touchdown. So it's basically a yes, no, is he going to throw one? 81% of the bets there are saying no, that Cooper Rush will not be having a passing touchdown today. Another one that was interesting to me was CeeDee Lamb and his receiving yards. All the action on the over at 58.5, but I think a big part of that is because the number is so much lower than we are accustomed to seeing from CeeDee Lamb throughout the course of the season. It's usually set at around 75.5, and despite that back issue popping up, people still think that he's going to go over, and it is a little bit funny. I know Emerson Latzia was making fun of it, but hey, no sun to blind him in the end zone either tonight.
Yeah, by the way, Stormy, we looked it up. Believe it or not, the D in Dallas stands for disaster, destruction, and damn it this season more than anything else. All right, we talk about this spread. It's a big number. Are we confident in the Texans covering that, even though they have had offensive issues?
The public seems to be. Laying the number is certainly the public play tonight. That's why we've seen that bet up from the 7 to 7.5. 81% of the tickets that are being placed on Monday Night Football are with Houston. And I think it's kind of just the prevailing thought that even though they've struggled, they've dropped back-to-back games, 3 of the last 4. They do get Collins back, and they're facing a Cowboys team that's reeling. Like, nothing says get-right game quite like playing the Cowboys recently. They've dropped 4 straight. They've got a backup quarterback with Dak Prescott unavailable. The defense has been a disaster, as you just said. Just keep that Big D theme rolling. So the public likes the Texans. That said, we are seeing a sharp play now that we're over that key number of 7 on the sharp bettors liking the Cowboys tonight as well. So you're getting that two-way action, but largely public on the Houston Texans.
All right, Stormy, thanks very much. The D in Dallas also stands for done, if you think about it. We are just getting warmed up here on the pregame power-up. Among the issues for Dallas in this season has been, as Stormy said, their defense, which just keeps getting worse, which we didn't think was possible. How will the Texans exploit it tonight? We'll have the answer when we come back on the pregame power-up. Pregame power-up is presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal.
Mike's on the final year of his contract, so outside there's of course going to be questions. What's the sentiment inside the locker room, and what do you tell people who are wondering about whether McCarthy will be your coach next year?
You know, that's above my pay grade about if Mike is coaching again next year. But, you know, all coaching aside, coaching, you know, Mike can leave and go wherever he wants. But the guys I kind of feel bad for is guys like Zach Martin and guys who might be on their last year or on their way out.
We continue on the pregame power-up presented by Campbell's Chunky. It is soup that eats like a meal. Now, that was Cowboys pass rusher Micah Parsons commenting on Mike McCarthy's future with the team, which, by the way, took a lot of headlines and was really taken out of context. He said it's above my pay grade. I'm not trying to do anything about that. He was just supporting his veterans. So everybody calm down about that. Parsons missed 5 weeks with an ankle injury and returns to a defense that I'm not sure he alone can fix. And here's how bad it's been. Here's a look at the Dallas D by the numbers. Second to last in points allowed. Second to last in rushing yards allowed. Dead last in opponents' red zone percentage, meaning teams they play are scoring in the red zone over 77% of the time. They've allowed 25 or more points in their 4 consecutive losses. That's the longest current streak in the NFL. They have never finished with the league's worst scoring defense and are only in front of the Carolina Panthers as things stand right now. And Claudia, what makes it even worse is the Cowboys have allowed 38.3 points per game at home. That would be the worst points per game allowed at home in the history of the NFL. And the ironic or interesting or funny thing is that record is currently held by the 1960 Dallas Cowboys, who gave up 36.5 at home in a year they went 0-11-1.
And all of this with a lot of returning guys after they were the best home team last season, right? When
Dan
undefeated.
Quinn going to Washington.
Yes,
devastating.
yeah, for sure. I mean, look at and it's not like just small losses, okay? 34-6 to the Eagles, 47-9 to the Lions, 44-19 to the Saints. The only close home loss was to the Ravens, which you give them flowers for that, but it's been absolutely awful.
No, absolutely not.
Maybe like a pedal?
Yeah.
No?
Maybe
okay.
a stem.
Also, the second worst team against the spread. Forgot to mention that off the top. So yes, 7.5 does seem like a lot of points, but it hasn't mattered how many points they're getting. They're not covering. Let's talk about Houston. They have just the guy to exploit this Dallas defense, which you talked about has just been awful against the run. Joe Mixon is averaging over 90 yards on the ground this season. He's third in rush yards per game behind Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley. Pretty good company. He leads the team with 814 scrimmage yards and 8 touchdowns. He scored at least 1 rushing touchdown in each of the 6 games he started and finished last season. And he's the true definition of a bell cow back. He leads the NFL in carries per game. He's averaged 24 or more in 5 of the 7 he's played. And he has had 4 straight games over 100 yards before being held in check by the Lions defense last week to the tune of just 46 yards, but he still got 25 carries in that game. His yardage prop tonight set at 89.5, which is the highest it's been all season long, Trey.
Yeah, as for the guy running the rock for the Cowboys, that is now unequivocally Rico Dowdle. Mike McCarthy said the 26-year-old undrafted running back is the team's #1 option. Over the last 2 weeks, Dowdle has had at least 12 carries and 3 catches in each game against the Falcons and the Eagles. You might expect those numbers to go up because Mike McCarthy said he wants to get him more involved. So here a look at the props for the Cowboys' #1 running back tonight. Keep in mind that their #1 running back does not have a rushing touchdown on the season. 12.5 carries is at right around his season average. Rushing yards a little below that with the expectation Dallas will be playing from behind tonight. He's eclipsed the receiving yards total in 5 of his 8 games this season. So that's how this ground game shapes up for each team. But Claudia, the Texans could match up well in the air against Dallas.
That's right, Trey. Let's take a look into tonight's next-gen matchup, starting with C.J. Stroud, who since entering the league has put up over 2,000 passing yards on intermediate passes. That's between 10 and 19 air yards. That is the 3rd most in the league. Now facing a Dallas squad that has allowed the most yards per attempt, the most EPA per dropback, and the 5th highest success rate to intermediate passes this season. The one receiver he targets the most on these is Nico Collins. Now, despite missing 5 games, he has put up these types of numbers: 40% of his targets on intermediate routes, 14 catches, almost 250 yards, and 2 touchdowns. With a C.J. Stroud passer rating almost perfect at 155.8. If you want to bet on Nico Collins tonight, 6 or more cashes will cash you out. Receiving yards set at 74 in the hook, and an anytime touchdown at +125. And if one man is going to stop this connection between these two guys, that is going to be Micah Parsons, who this Dallas squad was happy to get back last week. He generated a team-high 5 pressures on 20 pass rushes in his return, including 2 pressures that came in under 2.5 seconds. And despite missing 5 games, he still leads all Cowboys defenders in total pressures with 25. This Texas line hasn't been great. No one has pressured more than C.J. Stroud through the first 10 weeks of the season.
All right, Claudia, thanks. Here's a look at how the public is seeing this game tonight. Everyone is on the Texans. Over 90% of the bets and handle on the money line. Bettors confident in them to cover the spread as well, which again is a big number. They're split, however, on C.J. Stroud to throw over 1.5 touchdown passes with Nico Collins back in the fold. For more on the action DraftKings is taking on this game tonight, let's hear from our anonymous sportsbook informant who tells us what we're all terrified of, Captain Book.
Howdy there, partners. See this book here? Been taking moneyline spread and parlay bets on Houston all week long. Big hoss bettors and Johnny Jamokes been ponying up city slicker-sized stacks on that Texans team, even after seeing C.J. Cloudy Stroud's squad get walked off their own chewed-up grass. But that D'Amico Ryans, he only 5-10 ATS in his coaching career lane wood, and he couldn't barely sniff a win against Dallas when he was out there in pass. 0-2 straight up when he was lining up with Houston. Want to forward the Eagles. Now with the Governor's Cup on the line, you gonna tell this here captain that team there just played them Lions best they could, still wasn't enough? They gonna step up against them Cowboys, hungry as ever for the first win at home in Jerry's camper from the world on Monday night? Man, you crazy. Y'all ready for a rodeo? How about them Cowboys?
I have to defend all Texans now. Okay, my family's from Texas. I went to school in Texas. I don't know what that was. That was not a Texas accent.
See, I thought it was good. All right, I know.
It was horrendous, and I know someone who will back me up on this in just a few moments. I'll look at some notable numbers tonight. Will Anderson Jr. will miss his second straight game with an ankle injury, but the team expects to have defensive end Mario Edwards Jr. back from suspension. Rookie corner Karami Lassiter is questionable, coming back from concussion protocol. They could have Jeff Okudah back tonight. He's questionable after being activated off IR. CeeDee Lamb popped up on the injury report this weekend, expected to go at the back. The Cowboys will be out one of their corners as well in Deron Bland. All right, for more on everything about this game and everything that we just heard, let's bring in the big man from TCU, played 11 seasons in the NFL. I'd be thrilled with Quentin Johnston's game for the Chargers Sunday night. That is Marshall Newhouse. First of all, that is not a Texas accent. Let's just be clear. I don't know what that was. It was not a Texas accent.
I know a whole host of people who'd be embarrassed and not be okay with that accent or whatever you call that accent. So, yeah that was not Texan whatsoever.
That's why he's anonymous. That was a disaster, Marshall. So the Cowboys are sticking with Cooper Rush. Should they, though? Shouldn't they be trying to figure out whether or not they're going to get something out of Trey Lance?
Listen, I've been thinking about this a lot. And let's put our tinfoil hats here. I've got a conspiracy. Either Trey Lance is secretly the next coming, they figured something out, and they're hiding him and suppressing his free agency value to then re-sign him at a discount to be the backup and successor to Dak. Or the more likely scenario is he's just not that good. He was overdrafted in the first round, and he's just a guy that you don't see a future with. Either way, the Cowboys, you thought by now would have tried to figure something out, put him out there, see what you have. But to me, it's one of those extremes because not playing him over Cooper Rush doesn't make any sense unless they're just completely in the tank right now.
And it hasn't really mattered who was under center. As we said earlier, even with Dak, the offense just hasn't been able to do anything. So we'll see which direction. I like that, the tinfoil hat this is for the Trey Lance situation. I do want to talk about C.J. Stroud on the other side because coming off of a historic rookie season, we all sort of expected there to be a little bit of a drop-off. But he's really been struggling, and I know he lost Stephon Diggs. He was out, without Nico Collins for a few games. Nico Collins is back. Right now, C.J. Stroud has the worst passer rating of any quarterback with at least 100 attempts since Week 7. What do you think is the biggest issue in his game right now, outside of the lack of receivers, or is that the biggest issue?
I think it's definitely the lack of receivers. You lose Diggs, you lose Nico Collins, but the offensive line has not been playing well. But even a step beyond that, they are not doing well on first and second down. So they are leading the league or higher in the league in their average third down to go. And so you just don't put yourself in that position and expect to have success on offense when you're third and long. I don't care if you have Bobby Slowick or not. I don't care if you have C.J. Stroud or not. That is not a position you want to put yourself in. That puts pressure on your tackles, puts pressure on your guards. It puts a lot of pressure on C.J. Stroud. And he converts at a pretty high clip, but you can't live like that. And then I think the other thing is, I don't know if they've designed it this way, but teams have figured you out when C.J. Stroud doesn't appear to be in charge of the pass protection. Teams are sending simulated pressure, which means they're bringing a lot of guys up in the line of scrimmage or in the area and only rushing 4 or 5, but dropping guys in coverage. And it doesn't look like the offensive line know where to go or C.J. Stroud knows where the pressure is coming from. So there's that second level of maturation as a quarterback that elite guys get to where they know where things are before they happen. They either check plays out or they get the ball to the right guy, even if it's a short gain, and they move on down the road. C.J. Stroud is taking a step back a little bit, but it's often because they're in such third down scenarios that are just hard to overcome over and over and over again.
Yeah, Marshall, some of those issues you just alluded to may be the reasons why we heard these reports of the Texans having 2 players-only meetings and a talk of maybe a third one. Now, if the first 2 didn't take, I'm not sure why you would ever go down and have a third one. like third time's the charm. I don't quite get that. But take us in the mind of what happens in these meetings, because we hear this all the time. Players-only meeting. We just want to get together and hash things out.
I only heard of players-only meetings in 2 scenarios. Either it's a veteran-led team and they're trying to get ahead of things and right the ship, which I believe they have in with DeMeco Ryans.
Right.
I think they have a lot of veterans, guys who they trust and who understand what's at stake here, or things are about to crumble. If you're having players-only meetings multiple times, things are falling apart, it seems. I don't see that. Listen, they're still 6-4. They're leading their division. They're trying to keep up with Kansas City, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, the Chargers, and the like. So I think they're recognizing the moment that's in front of them and being like, guys, we have to take this upon ourselves. The best teams I was always a part of were ultimately player-led. We figured things out amongst ourselves. We didn't need a coach yelling, doing a whole lot. So the player-led meetings usually are a sign of that. Sometimes they're the sign that things are about to go really, really wrong.
You make a good point. They still have 6 wins, so it's not
Still
like they're in the situation that the
place.
Dallas Cowboys are. I want to stick with the Dallas Cowboys and injury concerns. One big one was CeeDee Lamb. We saw him pop up in the injury report last week with a back. We're seeing it this week. Mike McCarthy says it's nothing of high concern. But when you look at the situation in a player's perspective, he got paid in the offseason. The team is an absolute mess right now, really going nowhere, anywhere but up. As a player, I know you always say nobody just gives up, but does that take away some motivation and maybe him just going out there saying, hey, I don't want to get any further injured than I am right now?
Listen, on one hand, he is an investment. The Cowboys have invested into him. He's invested in himself. But on the other hand, if he is that guy, if he's a guy who you've paid at the top of your roster and you expect to be a leader, you're going to have to drag him off the field. Otherwise, he's just the wrong person for this job. Now, they've already paid him the money, and I agree. But listen, I think he's going to do everything he can to play. They're going to be reasonable about, if this is a bad, lingering injury, not making it worse. But CeeDee Lamb is a ball player. He wants to go play. Even if it's Cooper Rush out there, it's less than ideal. But he was a guy who you paid all this money, who you believe wants to lead this team by example. You don't lead when things are good. You lead when things are bleak. And right now, things are bleak for the Cowboys. But I expect CeeDee Lamb to play if he's available.
All right, how bleak are things for the Cowboys? You think they can right the ship tonight, or are you riding with the Texans?
I'm riding with the Texans. I don't think they have enough on defense. And ultimately, as you mentioned, if you're playing Cooper Rush, if he's your best option with Trey Lance on the bench, I don't know what your prospects are in such a quarterback-dependent league.
It's draft ready. That's what their prospects are. All right, Marshall, thanks. We'll check back with you a little bit later on in the show.
That has to be their goal moving forward. It just has to be. The Texans weren't even the Cowboys' most talked about opponent this week. When we come back, we'll check back with Emerson Latzia down in Dallas, who's got a first-hand scouting report on the team's most feared foe. That's coming up next on the Pregame PowerUp.
Pregame Power Up is presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal. We continue on the pregame power presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal. In a perfect summation of the Cowboys season, the Cowboys tried to open the roof at AT&T Stadium ahead of tonight's game for the first time in 2 years. And see that large piece of metal? That's not supposed to be there.
Oh.
That fell. And guess what they did? They decided to close the roof up again. So literally, the sky is falling on the Dallas Cowboys in the 2024 NFL season. I mean, what imagery perfectly sums up what's happened? Look at the difference between this season and last season in how this team plays at home. Dallas is averaging 14.8 points per game this season, down over 20 points from 2023. Look, you can blame it on injuries. You can blame it on a more competitive division. You can blame it on Dan Quinn going to Washington and taking a lot of those defensive players with it. But can you blame it on the sun? Because that's been in play recently. But who else could explain that more than our own Emerson Lotzi?
The Dallas Cowboys star, one of the most iconic logos in all of sports, plastered on players' jerseys and helmets. There's nothing really flashy about it, yet it manages to represent decades of glitz and glamour. Its 5 points sit right there at midfield in the heart of AT&T Stadium. But at the heart of our solar system, there's another star. Massive, hot, glowing with gas, and it's been leaving a blinding mark on America's team. A light brighter than the one shining on Dallas entering the year. I'm talking about a light more powerful and potent than the competition Dallas faces in the NFC East. I'm talking about the sun. Yeah, that sun. At 3-6, there's a glaring weakness inside Jerry World, and the Cowboys' newest enemy, whose gravity holds our entire solar system together, is tearing the Cowboys apart, and fans are turning up the heat.
If that's the excuse they're going to use, they need to find a better excuse.
We're not upset with the sun. We're upset with the players. They need to get it on. Like, they need to do something.
How would you combat the sun if you were Jerry Jones?
Tell the sun screw off.
Hey, he built it the way he wanted to. I don't know why you wouldn't go north and south instead of east and west. That's Jerry for you.
I couldn't understand it. I definitely could not understand the fact that we had to fight the sun anyway.
F you, son.
Yeah, there he is. Question now is, what's the solution to shutting out this shiny savage? You could pull a Mr. Burns and block it out. There's also this novel concept found in millions of homes and hotel rooms across the world. They're called curtains, and they're drawn when you want to block out the light coming from 150 million kilometers away. Lamb would love for Jerry to use the ones inside AT&T Stadium so he can CD touchdowns thrown his way.
Couldn't see the ball. Couldn't see the ball at all.
The sun?
The sun.
You in favor of curtains?
Yes, 1,000%.
Jerry Jones likes using the stadium's curtains for every event except afternoon Cowboys games. And he absolutely loves when people ask him about it.
We do know where the damn sun's going to be.
Why not put the curtains?
Well, let's just tear the damn stadium down, Bill. No, you kidding me?
Another solution that's been mentioned to help the Cowboys battle the sun is smothering and covering AT&T Stadium with 100 SPF. Oh, Jerry says that ginormous ball of fire in the sky gives Dallas a home field advantage, but maybe he meant the visiting team since the Cowboys have lost every game inside AT&T Stadium this year, which gives new meaning to the Sunday Scaries. Hey, thank God it's Monday night.
What about the sun? Where's the moon?
Don't you worry, Jerry. The moon will come out to play, and if it's anything like Friday evening in Dallas, it'll be a full one.
That was actually the best part of the fight. That was actually the best part of the fight. My
yeah.
favorite thing about all of this is Jerry somehow, when he was asked about putting up a curtain, in his mind, putting up a curtain is akin to tearing the stadium down. Because those two things are in no way the same thing. They are in no way the same thing.
That man's going to go out fighting no matter what. He has talked
That I
about
respect.
He wanted to go out with a great season with Dallas. You're not getting that, so might as well just fight everybody on the way down. And I thought Tyson's cheeks were going to be the nightmare of the century for me, but Jerry Jones as the Teletubby son actually is going to be the biggest nightmare for me.
Well, just the thing that gives us life on the planet would be Jerry Jones. That's a little more terrifying. Something that gives Buffalo fans is a lot of spirits is Josh Allen.
How about that Josh Allen guy? MVP conversation, we're right back in it because the Kansas City Chiefs, perfect no more. Thanks to this fourth quarter, fourth down touchdown by Bills quarterback Josh Allen. Allen had just a 1.2% chance of scoring on this play, according to Next Gen Stats. It put the Bills up by 2 scores late in the game, and that was all she wrote on KC's undefeated season. Wow, wow, wow. 30-21 was the final in that one. Allen, 27 for 40, 262 yards, and a passing touchdown, as well as a rushing one. That one we just showed you. Mahomes, 3 touchdowns, but 2 picks, and the top seed in the AFC still very much up for grabs. Allen is now 4-1 against Kansas City in the regular season, including 4 straight. It's the playoffs that have been the problem. The Chiefs have ended the Bills' Super Bowl dreams in 3 of the last 4 seasons, and the Bills quarterback knows that, and he's not going to get caught up by it in a big week for Week 11.
Means we got to 9 wins. I know it's from perception, outside perception, it's a really big game, and what it means for both fan bases and the league. We're in Week 11. You know, we're 9-2. Last time I checked, 9 wins probably doesn't get you in the playoffs. So, you know, going into this bye week, you get to enjoy ourselves a little bit, but coming back ready, you know, a hungry team and just trying to go 1-0.
Allen had fans cheering MVP after his touchdown run, and the sports book now agrees with them. That victory, combined with a poor Week 11 performance for Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, means Josh Allen is the new favorite. Allen moved from plus 350 to plus 150. Lamar was minus money. Now he is 2-1. And Mahomes took a big hit with the loss as well. Jared Goff still down there at 6-1. And I'm sorry, but none of this is surprising to me because I said the Bills were going to go one of 2 ways: be terrible with losing Stephon Diggs, or be great and Josh Allen would win MVP because he lost his best weapon. He was without Keon Coleman in this game, no Dalton Kincaid, and they still pull out a win.
Yeah, it's interesting, too, because, look, I'm not taking anything away from Josh Allen, but you look at Lamar and what he did against the Steelers, or more importantly, what he didn't do. They have 4 inexplicable losses, the Baltimore Ravens do, and then you have Jared Goff, who's riding an 8-game winning streak. Yeah, he threw 5 picks tonight. Did you see what he did yesterday?
Yeah.
4 touchdown passes, 412 yards. Like, don't sleep on Jared Goff.
But the difference is the roster around him.
Maybe, but it's okay. I'll give you that. But every one of these quarterbacks has had a stinker of a game. I think it's going to go right down to the wire to figure out.
I think it's Josh Allen's, and I'm so mad. I always preach Josh Allen.
It might be Josh Allen on whatever day it is now, but
listen, because it was always Lamar Jackson because. Yeah. Lamar Jackson played like Josh Allen does, but Lamar Jackson now has Derrick Henry, and Jared Goff has Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery.
They may not win the division. It's going to be hard pressure. We'll get into all that later. All right, let's bring in Marson. Just waiting to talk to us, and we're just going on here incessantly about other stuff. Marson, before we get anywhere, let's talk about the Bills and the Chiefs. You and I texted a little bit Sunday after the game. Did that game tell you anything about either of these teams that you didn't know beforehand?
I wouldn't say it was anything revolutionary, but what it did tell me is the Bills have learned a little bit. Obviously, they have a pretty good record against the Kansas City Chiefs in the regular season. We know that by now. But the way that the Bills won the game, to me, is directly translatable to a playoff win, which has eluded them against specifically Kansas City. They held the ball for 2/3 of the fourth quarter, keeping Patrick Mahomes off the field. They converted more 3rd downs. They intercepted Patrick Mahomes twice, and they ran the ball efficiently. And so to me, ultimately, having Josh Allen at the end of these games getting a scramble for 20 yards and a touchdown, if you can keep the ball out of Pat Mahomes' hands and do that and not turn the ball over, that's a winning formula to me. And so in the past, they've gotten the shootouts. That's not how you beat them. They've tried to ground and pound. They just don't have this consistent of a run game. To me, that game was the best formula. Now, Kansas City's going to go adjust. That's the best thing that they do between Pat and Andy Reid. They'll figure something out. Spags as well. They're not going to be the same team if they see each other in the playoffs. But to me, that was an impressive win and something that we had not seen in that totality from Buffalo.
Yeah, just keep Xavier Worthy from running himself out of bounds. That would help. That would help.
Yeah.
That would help. Well, one team that knows something about a winning formula has been the Detroit Lions. I think from the beginning of the season, going back to last season. And one thing that really stands out to me is point differential. They're plus 159 this season, Marshall. The Kansas City Chiefs plus 49. So despite being undefeated up until this past week, they've been very close games. Not the case with the Lions, who are now the Super Bowl favorite at the DraftKings Sportsbook. So two-pronged question, sort of the same question. How much is this statement true? The Lions are the best team in the NFL, and they should be the Super Bowl favorite.
I think right now they are the most complete team, yes, in the NFL. They're playing on all three phases like the most complete team. But I still don't have them favored because ultimately the playoffs come down to the best players in the game taking over the game. And the Bills, the Chiefs, and, to some extent, the Ravens have the best player on the field at any given time. And so when we're talking about a playoff game that's a margin, razor-thin margins, you want the guy who's going to make the play. I would take any of those quarterbacks over Jared Goff because that's what we're talking about here. Football is the ultimate team game. I preach that. I'm a lineman. I understand that better than anyone. But we call it nut cutting time. When there's actually moments to take over the game, do you want Jared Goff, who, yes, threw for 4 touchdowns against the Jaguars and 5 interceptions against the Texans, or do you want Lamar, Josh, or Pat Mahomes? And to me, that's all that's separating them is the quarterback play in biggest moments.
And the mobility factor, let's be honest. We love Jared, but all 3 of those quarterbacks you just mentioned have and will continue to make plays on their feet when everything downfield isn't available to them. All right, let's talk about Pittsburgh for a minute, because if Lamar Jackson is Superman, then the Steelers are his kryptonite. Outside of his record against the Chiefs, which is 1-5, every category statistically for him is career worst against the Pittsburgh Steelers. They know how to shut him down, and they did it again on Sunday. What does that tell you about how far this Pittsburgh team can go?
Well, to me, they do things that most other teams aren't willing to do, which is just let it hang out and be aggressive. And what I mean by aggressive, specifically against Lamar Jackson, is they challenged their receivers at the line. They played man, and they rushed their lanes. They kept Lamar in the pocket, made him make tight window throws against man coverage. And over the course of 4 quarters, they don't believe he could do that. And they've proven it over and over and over again. They're one of the only teams that feels like they can do that consistently. They kept Derrick Henry from really going off in this game. They kept Lamar Jackson from scrambling. And to me, that's a Mike Tomlin top-down thing of we have confidence, we have swag, we are going to be the aggressors, we're going to be the hammer and not the nail. And now ultimately, them going to Russell Wilson over Justin Fields was about we can get ourselves in position to win these close games with our defense. Can we have a quarterback who will take this over the top? Now, he made an egregious interception there at the end, but ultimately he is still a quarterback who has a Super Bowl trophy and has proven time and time again that he can perform in the playoffs when it matters the most.
So that was one quarterback move that turned out to be right, despite everyone thinking Mike Tomlin made the wrong move. One thing that I think we all sort of shook our heads at was when the Giants decided to pay Daniel Jones, but they did it, and now they're deciding to bench him for Tommy DeVito. This doesn't really make sense. And the biggest question now is this the last time that we maybe saw Danny Dimes in New York?
It's absolutely the last time you're going to see him in New York. I said this morning on the Golick Show. I haven't seen a quarterback get this many at-bats as a starting quarterback as Daniel Jones as a young quarterback. We know who he is now. There's enough of a sample size that we know exactly what level of mediocrity, which is right in the middle, right in that nebulous area that Daniel Jones is, and he is that. He'll go on and maybe get a chance to start somewhere else or be a backup and continue to make a lot of money, but he is not the guy to turn your organization around. This is Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen protecting what's left of their careers in New York. Specifically, this is a tank. They're putting out Tommy DeVito to get the best draft position to then build, because they had a pretty good draft class last year. I think with Malik Neighbors and guys who are producing for them from this draft class, I think they feel like if they put another one together, they can build. Ultimately, you need a quarterback to do that, but Daniel Jones is not that guy, and they know that for sure now.
Players can't tank. Organizations can tank. You're paying Drew Lock $5 million and you don't play him, that's tanking. That's exactly what's going on here. Marshall, as always, we appreciate it. We'll see what happens going forward. And again, they're not playing Daniel because they don't want to be on the hook for the rest of that money. All right, lots more coming. See, Marshall knows stuff. When we come back, if you want to bet the Cowboys, we may have found a way you can do it. We'll explain in the Data Dump. Pregame Power Up is presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal.
Welcome back to the Pregame Power Up, brought to you by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal. You already know what time it is. Time to see who our data-inclined feline thinks will score the first touchdown tonight. Next-gen Cats. The anticipation is kidding.
Made a beeline right away.
She went right to it. Nico!
Back in the lineup.
6-1.
All right, I get that. I'm good with
Kitty
that.
Cat just couldn't wait. He's back. Here's a look at who human bettors like tonight. Nico Collins is up there, plus 125 for an anytime. Joe Mixon, you gotta drink some juice, just under 200. CeeDee Lamb, we were talking about the prop for his yardage set low. Nice little price on his touchdown, plus 215. Rico and Tank Dell up there as well.
All right, we give you so much information in this show. It's such a nice, tight 60-minute adventure that we can't put everything in the show that we want to. So this is where we give you everything we got left in the tank and a little bit thing we like to call the data dump. How about we start here? The Cowboys are plus 3.5 on the second head spread, and you might consider it because Houston has been horrible out of the locker room this year. Just go back to that Sunday night game against the Lions. The reason, this season rather, they're 1-9 against the second half spread, worst mark in the NFL. And since the start of last season, Houston is just 8-21 against the spread in the third quarter, Claudia.
That's not good. There's nothing like having a good quarterback. Mike McCarthy has been the beneficiary of that in his career. Dak, Rodgers, Brett Favre under center, McCarthy covering the spread 55% of the time. with all other quarterbacks 17-19, including 7-11 against the spread at home, Trey.
Yeah, and Nico Collins is back, as we said, which is a very good thing. And we've already highlighted his receiving yards total. It has been climbing all day. It is currently at 74.5, but that could still be some nice value because he's had at least 78 receiving yards in 7 straight games that the Texans have been favored in.
A couple more troubling trends for C.J. Stroud. 8-4 ATS he is as an underdog, 5-10 against the spread as a favorite in his career. And the Texans 1-2 against the spread in night games this year. 13-30-1 against the spread since 2003. And teams that are coming off a home loss in primetime are just 14-37 straight up when playing in primetime the next week since 2010. And one more forgot to mention, I should say, when it comes to touchdowns. CeeDee Lamb, the reason he's at a great price, he has scored at least 1 touchdown in 8 of the Cowboys' last 11 regular season home games. So I think it's a real good value on him tonight.
We'll see what happens tonight because, yes, we've seen C.J. Stroud in primetime games. We saw him in the Thursday night game when they went to MetLife and lost to the Jets. We saw him in the Sunday night game last week when they were at home to the Lions and couldn't pull that one out despite Jared Goff throwing 5 interceptions. This is going to be C.J. Stroud's first ever Monday Night Football game. So we'll see how he responds to that situation. But if the Cowboys are going to make this interesting, they're going to have to find a way to run the rock. And that has been one of the things they just cannot do. The Cowboys are averaging 83.7 rushing yards per game in 2024. That is second worst in the NFL. And that's the second fewest right now in a season franchise in franchise history. They averaged just under 80 yards, 79.1 in 2020. And they're coming off a game where they couldn't do anything right offensively.
Well, you think about it, too. It's pretty simple football. If you don't have a quarterback under center that anybody thinks is actually going to throw the ball successfully, you just stack the box, stop the run. If you're already bad at running the football,
again,
that's not great.
Again, why I say, why not put a running quarterback out there in Trey Lance?
100%. I agree.
I get Marshall's thoughts.
I was going to say, which side of that tinfoil hat were you on?
I'm neither. I don't think they have a clue about what Trey Lance is. I mean, he had 5 interceptions in that one preseason game that he played, but he played well. This sounds like a horrible thing to say, but outside of the 5 interceptions, he actually played pretty well. I think they have to figure out what it is. They got to figure out what they have with this guy. And you can say whatever you want about Cooper Rush, Jera, but you need to know what Trey Lance is. And like you said, at least he'll give you something that you don't have with Cooper, an option that they have to defend. We'll see what happens. That is Claudia Bellafato. You heard from Emerson Lazio. You saw the king of Kincaids, Marshall Newhouse. For all of those beautiful people, I'm Trey Wingo. Thanks for watching the Pregame Power-Up. We'll see what happens tonight when the Cowboys play at home. Normally that means run and hide, Cowboys fans.